Welcome to our webinar on saving energy. We hope you found this useful and you go away with new ideas or plans that can support you in your school. There will be plenty of time to ask questions for our speakers, so please do type them in the Q&A box, and someone will be monitoring that, and we'll either answer them live or through the chat box. So I'm Suzanne Gibbon, the Let's Go Zero Programme Coordinator. And next slide, please, Alex. So today we have a couple of speakers for you today. Mary Leonard, who is a science teacher at Worle Community School, who took a life science degree at university and then went into education to make a difference about climate change. And she will be sharing some initiatives her school has taken and the work she's doing with her students. Then we will have Harry Paticas, founder and managing director of Retrofit Action for Tomorrow. So it is RAFT is a architect-led multidisciplinary community interest company with expertise in low carbon, healthy climate resilient architecture, and in parallel with deep retrofit design. It helps provide community engagement and zero carbon planning. Harry is an architect by profession and passive house designer and a recognised expert in the field of building retrofit. In 2018, he was nominated for the RIBA London Project Architecture and has won multiple awards. So please do use his expertise and knowledge and ask him as many questions as possible. We all like an engaged audience. And for those who are watching the recorded version, feel free to email in any questions you may have, and we'll pass them on to the appropriate people. So next slide, please. So we're about to hear from these amazing speakers to share their stories and top tips for energy saving. But before I hand over to them, I wanted to highlight some steps schools across the UK have been taking, and also where you can find some more inspirational ideas on our website. So at Let's Go Zero, we want to create this network of support so that schools, we can learn from each other, share ideas and access this expert advice. So next slide, please, Alex. There's loads and loads of measures, simple behavioural change measures that schools can take to implement through empowering their students and teachers within their school about energy saving. So of course, you know, huge retrofit, solar panels, heat pumps are going to cost a lot of money. But to take immediate action now, it is possible through behaviour change measures. So setting up eco teams who go around the school, making sure everything is turned off and not being used, raising awareness through these lovely posters, to staff looking at their energy usage and seeing where wastage is happening. So these simple behaviours can save a school a lot of money and a lot of energy. So next slide, please. So we've now created on our website, just for our schools, where you can find out about what other schools are doing across the UK, all the way from nursery level to post-16. And I would really encourage you to go onto our website and have a look at these stories and steal these ideas from each other. There's schools who run no electricity days once a term, even in the winter, to challenge their students in being creative and learning in a different way. So you can find them if you go into our main page, schools, and then school case studies. So please do have a read through them and share those ideas also. But now I would like to hand over to Mary to talk about their energy saving journey and share what they are doing in their school. So over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, and hello. Hi, guys. So yeah, I am just getting my screen share up. So our biggest saving that we did was to put up solar panels, which was massive for us because we've got quite a large site of most of the site is single story and most of the site is flat roofed. So we got solar panels across the whole thing, 1,000 solar panels and more across the whole site, which has made a huge difference. And that was probably also the easiest thing that we did as a eco committee in the school, because the student I was working with found a company that could do it, and the company wrote to the governors with a full plan and said this would be the plan, and came in and did it all for us. They came on site with architects and looked at the site and kind of assessed it, and then wrote a fully costed plan for the governors and went to the governors with it, and it was just a no-brainer. You know, they're there. We will put these up. We won't charge you anything. It will save you money on your electricity bills, and you will pay us back over 20-25 years. They're fully in charge of them, so they look after them completely. So it was very, very effective. And because they were educationally supportive and non-profit making, they give us a huge amount of info that I can use in science lessons as a science teacher. The maths teachers use them as well. And the amount of data on their website that we can use is really quite stunning. They also are willing to come into the school with us, with kind of packages of stuff to do STEM days with our students and stuff like that. So each year we get a different STEM day. So yeah, they were very effective, and I know they're not the only people doing it. There's a number of different organisations out there doing it, and it was pretty random the way they ended up getting picked. So that was, you know, has been really, really fantastic. Other things we've done have kind of fit around that, really. And very much the kind of usual thing of getting everyone to turn off. The IT systems have recently all been changed from stand-up PCs to laptops that we carry around with us, which very much encourages us to turn them off at the end of the night, because you're taking it home with you. So you're undocking it from the station, so it makes sense to turn it off before you undock it. And we've started to encourage across the school to have half the lights off in the classroom at any time, and the kids are actually really, really on board with that. Their kids really find it calms them down, and they like to be in a slightly gloomier environment. So my standard now is to have half of my lights off, and then if I need the kids to kind of wake up and pay attention a little bit more, I can turn the lights on, and it kind of oh, and everyone wakes up a little bit, and then we can turn them off later when we want to calm down a bit. And that's going on across the school as well, so that's really, really effective. The other thing that I wanted to just have a quick sneaky word about was this was the network that allowed me to find the Solar for Schools as our solar panel fitters that I started working with a couple of years ago. So they run, this is a map of all of the schools involved. So there's like a few kids from each school and a teacher. It doesn't actually need a teacher now, because we've got far more tight on our safeguarding procedures, so that each network has a designated safeguarding lead, so students can turn up just with a school email address and an address of a teacher. It doesn't have to have a teacher going, but if you've got any students that are really enthusiastic and they want to meet up with other really enthusiastic students, then these guys are incredible. It's basically it's the most enthusiastic students from each school getting together over Zoom and discussing what they are doing and what is working for them. And all of the teachers have a WhatsApp group that we're all on as well. And the quantity of information and ideas and support that I get from being part of a WhatsApp group of enthusiastic people has been absolutely massive. So I'd really recommend getting in touch. We went to COP, so I went to COP 27 with them in November, and that was just an incredible experience. Met George Monbiot, was the first person we met as we got off the train, and then he came along to one of our Zoom meetings and did a talk for us. So yeah, if you wanted to get in touch with them, I'm just trying to find the thing for it. No, it's not going to come up. It's the get in touch at ukssn.org.uk is the handle to use, and you can find it on a website. If you just put UKSSN into Google, and it comes up with website. So yeah, loads and loads of stuff going on. Thank you for listening. Cheers. I will stop sharing if I can. There we go.
Amazing. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for sharing. We've had a few questions come in, and then I'll hand over to Harry. So first question is UKSSN, is it for primary school level students or secondary or everyone?
So it's at the moment it's for 15 to 19-year-olds. Okay. And it's student led, so it's very different to other networks in that it's run by the students with the support of the adults involved. There are various groups within that trying to set up primary networks that primary kids can get involved in. We want our kids to be training up the next generation. Certainly Bristol is starting a primary network that's going to run slightly differently, so it'd be worth getting in touch to find out about it. There is a WhatsApp group network of primary teachers involved with it as well, so there's quite a strong primary element. The other thing that actually I forgot to mention is we have alongside it running a network of ops managers, which has been massive. So the support of my ops manager, I didn't realise when I started out on this journey just how massively important the support of my ops manager was going to be in all of this stuff. The fact that she's a committed environmentalist has been massive as well. So yeah, get your ops manager on board.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do when you do have your senior leadership team or someone who's got back on board. Just another question is thinking about the UKSSN, especially now, you know, since January, February time, there's been this, you know, we're heading into this energy crisis and the cost of energy, and has there been new ideas that's come up through the UKSSN that you've then applied in your school about energy saving, or have you had that support network to discuss issues and how to tackle it?
I know that, so my ops manager, through me being involved, has got involved in the ops management side of things, and I know she gets a lot from the operations side of things as to how they can energy save, looking at how we can save the amount of paper we're using and stuff like that. We also, it was through UKSSN that we got involved in, we put up electric vehicle charging points across the trust. So there's 2 charging points on each of the school sites. And that came through ideas given to me by other people as to, you know, which groups they used, who organised it, how they organised it. It's just, it's all about not reinventing the wheel. Kind of on the WhatsApp group, people, anything that anyone does, they put on the WhatsApp group. And then when you're like, oh, I don't know how to do this, oh, I'll just type on the WhatsApp group, I don't know how to do this, has anyone got any ideas? And you just get loads and loads of resources because we're all interested in getting it done, rather than but it was me that did that, I'm not going to give that to anyone else. That sort of possessive attitude just doesn't happen. So yeah, I suppose we've had loads, but off the cuff thinking what? I don't know. Most of the eco work I've done in the past 3 years has been via that, being given that as an idea and going with it.
Yeah, amazing. I am so happy you said that it's not about reinventing the wheel, because we say that all the time at Let's Go Zero. It's about sharing knowledge, sharing ideas, sharing expertise.
Really powerful.
Yeah. Harry, I can see you've got a question, and I'm going to actually invite you to ask it.
Great, thank you, and thanks a lot, Mary. That was really fascinating talk. Yeah, I just want to pick up on that fascinating comment you made about generally having half the lights off in your classroom. And I think, I mean, I don't think I can fully explain this, but just my insight is that very often a lot of classrooms have too much glazing. And I wonder whether you think there's a relationship between sort of just a bit too much glazing and lighting, and possibly a bit too much lighting as well. There's actually about tempering the two and getting the right quality of light.
It's probably very true, actually, because we're quite an old site. The quality of light isn't great. We don't have massive windows, and I have worked in schools that do. So yeah, there's definitely a balance to be had. And I don't know, yeah, I have been quite surprised since I started turning lights off at how much the children just they're much calmer with that light. It would be nice to have kind of slightly better quality light, I think, definitely. definitely would like to see that.
Is it LED light?
We have actually, no, we've changed across the whole trust to LED lights. Again, this the operations manager, because she's quite obsessed with an awful lot of things that people are like, oh, we could do this. It's like, I've already done that. Oh, okay. So, yeah, definitely. So yeah, we have, in the last 2 years, we've changed everything to LED. And they're talking about getting heat pumps. I think in the next year, they're putting heat pumps in everywhere as well.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Harry, for that question. Mary, just one quick question, and actually we'll hand over to Harry, then we'll have time for more questions at the end also. So you've spoken about your ops manager, of course, but how are you getting your other teachers in your own school and wider trust engaged in the energy work in your school and engaged in just the wider climate action and sustainability?
So we're getting involved with Teach the Teacher. So one of my missions this year is to get my year 10s involved with Teach the Teacher and doing that. The head's very interested in having more inset time dedicated to sustainability. One of the things that I've learned from UK SSN is that if you have a small group of very committed kids speaking truth to power, you know, they can ignore me and tut at me and roll their eyes all they want about me going on at them about sustainability. But when it's coming from 14 and 15-year-olds, people get a lot more awkward and a lot more embarrassed when kids start moaning at them about it. And if the kids can talk to them intelligently about all the stuff that's been going on in the last year with you know, you can't, it's not a day goes by where there isn't another thing. And if the kids can use that against adults, then adults start coming into line. I saw that massively at COP. It was such a powerful experience to take these 20 kids up, and they were speaking, you know, I mean, we interviewed Nadine Zahawi and Alok Sharma and all sorts of other top level individuals, and they just had a kind of look of shame as children spoke to them that they just don't get when they're speaking to other adults. They can kind of patronize and put you down in a way they can't to a 15-year-old that's telling them. And I think that works on a school level as well. If you get a small group of committed kids like talking to adults, then it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, amazing. So you'd highly recommend
I can't hear you, Suzanne, or I can't.
So you'd recommend empowering your student body to then go and use their force for nature to make change happen.
I think something we've seen in the network as well is the power of having a committed teacher, one committed teacher, one committed student, and one committed person on the ops or your management governors. You kind of form a triad that then can work together to really get things done. So it's worth kind of trying to seek out that triad and work with that as a thing.
Amazing. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for sharing about your own school and then the wider UKSSN work. I'm going to hand over to Harry now, who's going to give us amazing advice and some top tips on energy saving and talk about the work he does in schools also. So over to you, Harry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Suzanne, and hi everyone. Really, it's a great honour to be talking today. I'm going to share screen right away. Except my screen, for some reason my screen has stopped working. I don't know why. Please bear with me. Yeah, we did a test beforehand and it worked absolutely fine, and I have no idea why it's not working. Oh yeah, there you go. There's just some kind of glitch for some reason. Can you see that all right?
Amazing, yes.
Sorry about that. I don't know what was going on there. So yes, hi everyone, and thank you for inviting me, Suzanne. I am going to talk today about the work that we've been doing. We are a community interest company, as Suzanne said. We're not for profit, have no shareholders. We've been working on PSDS schemes, low carbon skills fund schemes. Been working with the London Borough of Lewisham. We're working at the moment with the Church of England, which is really exciting. We're engaging with dioceses and building offices across the country. We're working with the Sept Diocesan Board of Education and helping 14 schools across South London. And we're also working with the London Borough of Lambeth. So we're sort of suddenly getting very involved with a lot of exciting schools and opportunities. I'm going to talk very briefly. Mary just said there's not a day that goes by, and I just want to very, very quickly just reference 3 crazy things that have been going on, and then just sort of share a very ironic observation. So the first one is that we keep hearing about these planetary boundaries. This dashed line is the line at which we start to become unsafe. And as you can see, we're sort of unsafe in quite a few areas already of these planetary boundaries. And every few weeks, there's more reporting of as these boundaries are sort of being smashed through. At the moment, we've got 4 of these absolutely crazy gas leaks taking place, where pure gas is just being released from the bed of the North Sea, the Baltic Sea, and is sort of being released out into the atmosphere. We then also are in the context of this unbelievable energy crisis at the moment. And what is really bizarre is that NASA have just fired the DART into an asteroid, and they've managed to divert an asteroid. And of course, this is in the event that maybe an asteroid hits Earth, and it just seems so ironic that you know, they're all looking up at this asteroid, but not looking down, and sort of, you know, the powers that be are just simply not doing enough. So what are we going to do about it? Well, I think Let's Go Zero are on the money here. And these are some of the students that I was working with in a school, and I told them about Let's Go Zero. And I said, and by the way, did you know that your school's not signed up? And they said, what? Our school's not signed up? And they said, right, can we go to the head teacher right now and sign up? I said, yeah, let's do it. So this is us just at the head teacher's desk, and they've just signed up. So they were really excited about it. So very briefly, what we do in Retrofit Action for Tomorrow is we look at deep retrofit of buildings. We provide service to do a deep retrofit to buildings. And we're doing that at an estate scale. We're doing it at a building and whole school scale, but we also do it at a detail scale. So we care about all those different levels all the way through. We do that in parallel with community engagement, and we work a lot with children. This is them with our thermographic camera and then feeling heat. This is them building some models, and this is called the Baked Potato Challenge, where they try and keep a baked potato warm for as long as possible. It's really good fun. And this is them doing some action research on their school. So we also follow up with staff. We give them a retrofit workshop before we start work with the school and the children. But this is actually us at the end of a project where we've installed an MVHR system, and that mechanical ventilation repeat recovery. And we wanted to ensure a really good handover. So this was us actually just talking about it for an hour. Can you believe you can talk about ventilation for an hour? But you actually can. But they were all really grateful, and they even did a sort of an obligatory wave at the end of this for a possible slideshow, which is today. So we're also fascinated in what makes up a school's community. And one school head teacher said that she thought through her action she might reach 5,000 people, and that number 5,000 I find really interesting. And for that school, it was a multiplier of about 10. It was about 10 people per child. And I just find that absolutely fascinating that there are so many people involved in schools. So what we really want to do is help influence community through the work we do at schools. And of course, we want to help people retrofit their homes to make them safer, more comfortable, and avoid fuel poverty. So the other service that we offer is zero carbon, and we worked with a carbon intelligence to develop a carbon audit calculator, and that's scopes 1, 2, and 3. So what we're doing is wholly aligned with Let's Go Zero, in the sense that we're also looking at scope 3 emissions, which are the emissions of the operations that happen in the school, in the building, and not just the energy side of things. So we can then break that down, and as you can see, the yellow is all the scope 3 emissions, and this is for a typical school. It's really quite surprising how high they are. And then this is a sort of timeline of what that moving to zero carbon might be by 2030. And it's certainly very challenging. But as you can see, there's a sort of a removal of gas here in this light blue. This is gradual decarbonisation of the grid, and then the yellow gradually stepping down as the scope 3 emissions year on year dropping. Very, very challenging, but doing it together is definitely the way forward, as Mary suggested. So this is a very brief look at some buildings. These are actually 5 buildings that we've been working on in Version. I just want to make the point that sometimes people want to sort of put buildings in a certain category and say they're like this. Well, actually, each of these sites has got multiple layers of building on them. So they're actually quite complex. They also have many layers of repairs. So I just sort of want to emphasize that it's sometimes people oversimplify what you can do to buildings and say, oh, just throw up some insulation. Well, actually, it does need to be done carefully. That's really the main point. So there are three things that we use for our approach to retrofit. So the first one is low carbon. And this is very much about reducing heat loss. So you can see here there's a walkway that runs around the school that has been losing heat ever since insulation was installed either side, but they forgot to do the walkway, and it's over 1,000 meters long. So it's a lot of heat being wasted. So what we then want to propose is insulation. So in this case, this is a special cavity wall insulation detail. We then want to remove fossil fuels. So this is an old gas boiler that was recently taken out, and we replace it with an air source heat pump. So we've basically decarbonized the heat. So in parallel with low carbon, we want to make schools healthy and comfortable. Now, most schools should have one of these now. So some way of monitoring temperature and carbon dioxide in the classroom. And if you graph that, you start to get some very interesting curves where the carbon dioxide rises in the morning and then dips at lunchtime, rises again in the afternoon, and then tails off in the afternoon when everybody goes home. But very often those numbers are too high. They're over the Department for Education guidance, and they can actually make you feel sleepy, and they can reduce your ability to concentrate. And one of the reasons for this is very often the ability to get cross ventilation has been removed. So these are two new windows, or relatively new windows, that are double glazed, and they would have replaced the original, very carefully installed with a pole and a hook and an ability to open at high level to achieve cross ventilation from the windows on the opposite side, and that's very often taken out. So just changing a window, even just one, to allow a little bit of cross ventilation can make a big difference. What's even better, though not always needed, is mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. So this is some duct work that we try to do as kind of aesthetically as possible, and it's sort of exposed and mounted on the ceiling. Brilliant for hanging things from. I've got some with Diwali pictures all the way along it. And this is actually providing really good air quality to the classrooms in the school, making the children more comfortable. So then the third thing we want to help make schools become is more climate resilient. And this is a rather shocking graph of real data from a classroom in that last week of term, just before the summer holidays. And that was when we had that huge heat wave. As you can see, one of the classrooms actually reached 36 degrees, which is absolutely incredible. And this is mainly due to overheating. And it's that there was too much south glazing. It was very difficult to cool the building down at night due to insurance reasons and inability to cool it down overnight. It was very hot anyway at the time. But we feel that there's a number of measures that can be done that perhaps there isn't that much knowledge about. One of them is called stack effect, and in this case we replaced single glazing, a very large area of glazing that was catching the sun, with triple glazed but operable roof lights. Just by making the top layer of roof lights operable has actually made all the work we did at this school the number one most popular thing we did. So there's a lot of other things we did, all hard won, but getting those roof lights openable was the sort of most popular thing. We asked for feedback, and it was about sort of 99% was those windows in the foyer. And the point is that they can cool the foyer down, and so they can open them up at night. They've got a sensor, so if it rains, it closes. But now they can get ventilation. So as we start to move towards climate breakdown and more hotter summers, being able to cool down our schools is going to be incredibly important. And another way we're doing that is through looking at infrastructure around the school, trying to reduce the amount of tarmac which absorbs heat, but also thinking about the other effect of climate change, which is very heavy rainfall. So we're very keen to look at ways to intervene in that rainfall going into the sewers. So this is actually a rain garden. That's a rainwater attenuation basin, so that a lot of the water that falls on this school is going to run into this rain garden. And that offers other opportunities to create cooling. You have trees and plants. This also offers the chance for more biodiversity at the school. And we've done this with workshops with the children, and we gave them some rather lovely second-hand books with lovely images in them, and just said you can cut these books up, which was actually terribly exciting for them to cut books up, and they cut out images of plants, and they helped design 10 new rainwater planters that are going to go all the way around the school. We're going to cut into every single downpipe and put a rain garden planter in each one around the school. So that's another way of reducing overheating and creating biodiversity, better connection to nature, and then reducing the risk of flooding around the school. And then let's just not forget trees, because trees really can cool down spaces around schools. And most schools I see are seas of tarmac around the buildings. And you know, I think a lot more research needs to be done, guidance needs to be provided on this, because there's issues about below ground services and drainage and roots and insurance and things like that. But actually there are ways of planting trees in playgrounds to actually reduce overheating. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of that. So in terms of the approach we would take, we start with a site analysis. We then look at thermally modeling the buildings. We look at a series of options, and then we come up with a retrofit plan that shows the different stages of how we might carry out those works over time, and then how the carbon emissions might drop over time. Now, of course, all this is very ambitious and requires you know, a lot of organisation, a lot of work. But I'm just trying to give you all a picture of how this might take place. Then this is a slightly more detailed slide that shows how you could achieve zero carbon buildings in about a 4-year period through phased works that are very carefully staged and carefully worked out in relation to the greatest need first, in relation to existing boilers, and gradually trying to decarbonize that heat. So very short case study here. This is, I actually saw it on your slides, Suzanne. This is Dalmain Primary School in Lewisham. Just by chance, the slide you showed the children actually in the boiler room, which was nice to see them there. And here we've actually removed all the gas from this building. We've insulated the roof. This is the roof light I told you about earlier on. So this has been replaced with triple glazing. We've put an air source heat pump at the side. We've put cavity wall insulation in, and it's you know, I could probably talk for about half an hour about cavity wall insulation. Promise not to, but it's really important to not just throw cavity wall insulation in. I really believe passionately that you've got to look at the base detail and the risk of moisture coming up from the ground, and the risk of that cavity being filled with all sorts of debris from over the years and from construction. But also the quality of the pointing. Again, a topic I could probably talk about half an hour about that as well. But the pointing is really important. It's what protects the bricks. It's what protects the insulation. It's what keeps the insulation dry. So it's really important to think about that. And then here you can see that we've installed a mechanical ventilation with heat recovery system, and we're providing fresh air to all the classrooms. And some classrooms we've found are actually okay, and some classrooms are really bad. And I think there's a valid piece of research to do a kind of triage process on classrooms to see which ones are actually all right and which ones need particular attention. In this case, it was the middle one that needed a lot of attention. The two end ones were actually not too bad, but the middle one was breaking through a lot of the standards for air quality. So I'm now going to go through, I think it's 13 top tips. So these are, so I know a lot of what I've said is quite high level and is quite technical and detailed. The intention of this is that you've got something to go away with and sort of do some direct action, depending on whether it suits your particular school environment or not. So everybody should have one of these now. There should be one of these on all classroom desks. I hope they haven't migrated into drawers or other places around the classroom, but it'd be good to think about getting these out. And here I'm suggesting to use the actual temperature. The purpose of these was mainly for carbon dioxide, but I think it's really worth looking at the temperature. And I think it's worth starting to track and ask teachers what temperature their classrooms are at. And I think it's certainly worth doing some testing. I think it's worth premises managers and ops teams to be looking at testing turning down thermostats, you know, ratcheting them down, you know, turn it down 1 degree. You might find that there's no complaints at all, that it's absolutely fine, that everybody feels comfortable. So it's just something to look at is temperature. I think it's a very unglamorous and unexciting activity to take meter readings and to go off to the, you know, sometimes 10 locations around a school and obscure cupboards to pick up meter readings. Sometimes they're smart meters, sometimes they're much older, such as this one. Then taking that reading, putting it into a spreadsheet, and then graphing it, I think, and potentially sharing it with senior leadership, sharing it within classes, as we saw with Mary, looking at data together, and maybe even presenting it at an assembly to say, look, this is how we're doing. This is the energy we're using in our school. So I think it's really worth doing that, and I really would suggest doing that on a weekly basis. It's usually done on a monthly basis, but weekly would give a much finer grained feel. And given that it now costs so much, I think there's a lot more reason to start looking at it. This school has had these 2 lights on and about another 10 around the building on since it was built 3 years ago. They basically were just, the timer was just set to permanent. And so I think it's really worth checking timers generally for all lighting in schools, inside and out. And again, it's an unglamorous, odd activity to sort of be bothered to go and look at a timer and to sort of work it out. But I kind of, I just want to encourage you to sort of try and make the effort to look at it and try and interrogate it. I'm no expert at reading air source heat pump timer settings, but I also just gave it a go and just pressed buttons, and you sort of get the hang of it. So it's really worth trying to investigate and turn things off. This was actually an air source heat pump control unit, and really this slide is to remind you to look at your heating and hot water timers and just check that your frost settings are correct, because there is I have been to some schools where heating has been left on at 24 degrees set point through the whole of the Christmas holidays, simply because the premises manager was worried about frost and damage to pipework, so frost bursting pipework. So which is unfounded. I mean, this is of understandable reason to be cautious, because you don't want to flood in the school, obviously, but you can put good frost protection in place. So I think really looking at timers for both on the daily cycle, on the sort of the weekend cycle, and then on the half-term and longer holiday cycle is worth doing. This is, I'm quite passionate about this one, as you probably gather. There's a huge advantage to getting children involved. Mary made this point absolutely brilliantly earlier on. It's that people listen to these young ones, and when they point, they're so observant. I mean, they're unbelievably observant, and they spot everything. As soon as they know what to look for, they spot it. So here I've got them actually doing an energy audit of 4 classrooms, and they were so on it, and they were spotting all sorts of things that could be changed. So I think it's really worth encouraging them and using their power and interest. This is a radiator that I took a thermographic photograph of, and we discovered that only the top bit was hot and the bottom bit was completely cold. And you often get air trapped or sludge trapped in radiators, and it's really worth, you don't need a thermographic camera to do this. It's only, I've used it because it makes for a good photograph, but you can use your hand and you can just feel it, or you can use a very cheap 25-pound infrared thermometer to actually pick up the temperature. So this is really worth doing, because actually you can get far better efficiencies by actually getting the heat where you want it, rather than the heat circulating around the pipes where you don't want it. This is a kind of spot the radiator photograph. So this is a little bit of active work on your part. I can see you, Suzanne. Can you spot the radiator there?
I know it took me a while actually, but it's behind the purple boxes, isn't it? I mean, it's all covered up.
Yeah, it's not only is it already in boxing, which is probably because the radiators were set to too high a temperature, and so there was some health and safety concern about it, but it's also behind boxing. So if you allow some space around a radiator, it can do a bit more radiation, and it can actually spread the heat more easily through the room, rather than just going back into the pipework and not releasing its heat into the space, which is what it's designed to do, release the heat into the room. Here this was a wall constant hot water unit that unfortunately in this case was on for the whole of half term. Basically, I heard this click on and off when I was surveying this room, and well, what's that? And I realised that it was basically just keeping this water at boiling temperature for a whole week, which felt incredibly wasteful. I went over and turned it off, and was hoping that the next teacher that came along at half term for a cup of tea wasn't going to curse me and could use the kettle. I think there was a kettle somewhere over here. So you know, obviously it's convenient, but only really during the working time. There's just no point in having it on over that time, and it goes for many other appliances. This is something that's really fascinating. So here again, I'll get you being a little bit active. What do you think? And it's only you, Suzanne, really, because I can't see anybody else. But what do you think of the cold surfaces, and what do you think of the hot surfaces? I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot here.
Not at all. Cold surfaces and hot surfaces. I mean, hot if it's the winter, right by the side of the radiator. Yeah. That's where I always sat as a student.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got, unfortunately, you've got one child that is right bang next to a radiator, and that radiator might be really quite hot. That's really not a nice place to sit. That's going to be really uncomfortable. So I think thinking about where desks are, where children are sitting, is actually going to really improve their comfort. And then the other one is the child sitting next to that beautiful glazing that is actually on a solid brick wall. And if it was 0 degrees outside, that would be really cold, and that would be pulling the heat off your face, and you'll actually start feeling really cold next to that wall. So you've got two examples in the middle of the winter. They're actually really uncomfortable, and I think just a little rearrangement of the classroom would actually go a long way. It would actually help. So that's one top tip. This one is a huge one, and I think might be a significant proportion of energy wastage in schools. And this is me hearing, I think 3 times now, stories of, and this is nothing against the kitchen staff, by the way, it's just stories I've heard. And they come in and they turn on the ovens and they turn on the ventilation system straight away as soon as they come in. And they don't actually need to do that straight away. So I think the way in which appliances are used and controlled in the kitchen is really important to look at. And it's often something that's overlooked. If there's a subcontractor that comes in and they do their thing in the kitchen, they just left their own devices. I think sub-metering kitchen energy usage is really worth doing. It's often paid by the kitchen company, but sub-metering it and just understanding how they operate in the kitchen and talking it through with the head chef, I think would be brilliant. And I think the children talking it through with the head chef would be fantastic. I think that would be a great way to sort of find a way of breaking the ice and making a connection there. So this one's a bit more technical, but buildings are full of holes. In this case, I was rather shocked. I went up into a roof. You shouldn't really see any daylight here because this is what you call a warm roof. This is insulated panels on the roof. And there's a sort of giant gap there and there and there and another one there. And this is brand new. This was built only 2 years ago. And it was just leaking. There's just air passing through. All this warm air was coming through, leaving at one end, and freezing cold air coming in the other end. So it is worth checking for excessive air leakage in buildings. It's worth thinking about. The next one is that if you've had any recent construction work carried out, I strongly recommend just checking whether it was actually done properly. In this case, this is a signed off by building control 2016 extension that was designed to have 300 millimeters of insulation right in front of us now, and it actually has none. And just below here is the person that works on reception, below 1 sheet of plasterboard, 2 freezing cold ventilated loft space. So this does happen, and it does get signed off by building control, and it is really worth checking going up into these roof spaces. Now, this is what some of those roof spaces look like. This is a genuine me arriving and my jaw dropping when I looked at this insulation just thrown about everywhere. This is what happens when multiple layers of services engineers come in and they do their thing, and they're sort of trying to get to the cables or the access in the rooms below, and they don't put it back, and nobody else, it's not that accessible up there, and nobody really checks, and it ends up like this. And you could save so much money by going up and tidying this up. So if there was one takeaway from today, it would be to go and check the loft insulation. Do it safely, obviously, but you know, even buying a couple of rolls and filling a few gaps could actually save quite a bit of money. It's actually really worth doing. This is just a flag that wet walls are basically, they will lose more heat than dry walls. Most schools I see have a little bit of a leak somewhere going on, and that's simply because there's one or two premises people and there's thousands of linear meters of guttering, and it's autumn and leaves are falling, etc. So it's not by any means an indictment of them not being able to look after their buildings properly. It's just that it's just a fact of life. But it's just that I do think it should be high on the priority list to make sure this doesn't happen, because that wall will lose so much more heat in a wet state. It's also going to lead to mold and other things. And then finally, a bit of a shame to end on a damp problem, but and this is again unbelievably unglamorous, and it gets so little attention. This is very, very common, and that will also lose a lot of heat. It's a wall that just has not had the damp problem sorted, and it just keeps staining and keeps being wet. And I think sometimes you really have to pull out all the stops and solve damp problems. You know, they're the kind of thing that often gets covered up. Oh, we'll make it work, or we'll just put another layer over it. But actually, there's a problem, and it might be a leaking pipe below ground, and it needs to be investigated and sorted. So I'm going to end on this. Hopefully my timing's all right, Suzanne. Leave a bit of time for questions. I'm going to end on this because I just wanted to leave you all with a sense of what might the zero carbon timeline to 2030, what might the sort of the planning framework look like? So it's really important to have a vision. We think it's very important to carry out an internal audit and then to develop some early strategy and planning. There are then a series of what we call rapid low-cost actions, and a number of them I've just outlined of what they might look like. We then think it's important to prepare a detailed whole building plan, and obviously that's subject to funding. It's then important to go through the whole funding process and then to look at the retrofit phasing over time, over a number of years, and then eventually we can get to 2030. And I think that the one takeaway from this is the importance of planning, the importance of getting things in place. And I think to not get too hung up about funding, but planning, it comes a long time before funding, and it's about getting planning in place. So yeah, so that's me. Hope that was helpful, and really welcome questions.
Amazing, thanks so much, Harry, really, and thank you for the 12-13 top tips at the end, because they really are sort of the quick, easy wins that you can do in a school. I know you mentioned about keeping, like, trying to lower classroom temperatures. So at Let's Go Zero, we always agree that it's 19 degrees is the ideal classroom temperature. It's not the person sitting really still in the office. It's you know, the classrooms warm up because there's 30 people, 35 people in them all moving around. So 19 is our ideal recommended, not 24, where it's almost burning you when you touch the radiator. Yeah. We have had some questions come in, and actually you might have touched on it slightly, but what is the most common problem that you see when you go into school buildings? Is it windows, insulation? Is it boilers? Yeah.
That's a really fascinating question. I think probably all the things I've said it's just different mixtures of those. I think I do see a lot of leaks. That's very frequent. I do see a lot of damp. I see and the thing is, it's always in bits, so it's never across the whole school. So for example, overheating is really common. It happens in nearly every school, but in some buildings it just happens in 2 classrooms, and it might be the top level south where it's really bad. So I would say that there's no sort of one most bad thing that happens, but it's a sort of scattering, and it's kind of quite random and varies because of the orientation of buildings and the different periods the buildings are from.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, yeah, of course, it's not sort of a one size fits all, one problem is the same. Yeah.
I mean, it goes without saying that we do need to remove gas boilers. I mean, I think that's sort of clear. So whenever there's a gas boiler, that I see that as a problem, and that's obviously something that we want to address as quickly as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And then I know you've been working with schools quite a lot, and you've got some more lined up this year. Is it hard to do retrofit work without causing disruption to learning? I know you do a lot of student engagement, a lot of staff engagement.
Yeah, I love this question.
Yeah.
No, I really do, because I think there's a perception that building work is a pain. I actually see it as the opposite. I see it as an amazing opportunity to both show the community what is happening at the school, and for the children to learn, for them to learn about processes of construction, and for them to learn about the skills, the green skills and careers that they might get involved with in the future. And it's a way of it actually happening before their eyes. Obviously, it causes health and safety issues, disruption to playground, access issues, safeguarding issues, but you can deal with them. And I did hear a story, and I've never actually managed to track this story down, but it was some borough in London that had a school that was in trouble, and the head teacher came in and embarked on a 4-year program of construction. It was just a building site for 4 years, and it's sort of come out as an excellent school, an outstanding school, and everybody's happy, and they've done building work. So I don't think it should always be seen as a negative thing. I think it really can be seen as a positive as well.
Yeah, I really like that you've touched on the green skills and jobs focus on it as well. I think there's a huge skills gap at the moment, and young people aren't being exposed, and they don't know where to look, or what is a green job. And so having them see that construction and architecture and landscaping and nature-based solutions, it's all there, and there's so many different elements in this job that they can then be exposed to with just their school buildings. Yeah. This is a sort of a question for both of you, really, Mary or Harry. Harry, I know you work with councils a lot, but I was wondering, Mary, would you recommend reaching out to your local authority? Do you work with your local council at all in either engagement or climate action funding applications?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely that the local councils are really enthusiastic about getting involved. They generally, my experience is they have green committees or green councillors, and they've given me loads of support. So I'm in fairly close contact with the green councillors for North Somerset, for Weston-super-Mare, where I am, for Somerset, which is only about 5 miles away, because our trust spans across into Somerset. So some of the further south town councils are also in touch with me, and they're really eager to get involved and to find us things to do and to get us involved in town projects. So they're always looking for students, oh, have you got any students to get involved with this? Have you got any students to get involved with that? A lot of town councils are setting up youth town councils, and they want environmental boards, environmental committees for their youth town councils. So no, they're definitely really, really helpful.
Yeah, amazing. Great. Yeah, I speak to local authorities a lot, and they're always very keen and eager, and how can we support our schools, how can we help our schools? So I highly recommend reaching out to your local authority about energy crisis or retrofitting or funding opportunities, because a lot of the time they have funding and no one's applying for it. So please, do reach out.
They're also really helpful in like getting schools talking to each other, because they're really into helping us network with each other. They'll have teachers that are interested in environmental stuff in each school, and then they'll put you together with each other, which can be really helpful.
Mary, I see there's a question for Harry that you've written in the chat. Would you like to ask it?
So, I mean, yeah, Harry, I'd be really excited in putting you in touch with our ops manager, but it's like, how does one go about getting you involved? How much does it cost to get you involved? Because the first thing she's going to say is, oh, how much does he cost? And try and put me off, because I'm always demanding more money for our eco stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, well, we're looking at this in a lot of detail, and we're sort of looking at ways of offering different services for different things. So there's a kind of there's a price point for a full deep heat decarbonisation plan of a large estate, and it involves measuring all the buildings and creating thermal models, and that's sort of 10,000 plus, and that's really sort of possibly beyond some budgets. But we're also looking at one day events where we actually come along and do what we're calling a building tune-up, where we just sort of arrive and we just look at settings and make observations and go up into lofts and just try and give some sort of preliminary advice. So we kind of different amounts. So and also, as you probably gathered, every school is different size, different conditions. Geography plays a bit of a part as well. But we're always keen to hear from new people, and there's always a way to make it work. So thank you for that.
It's a bit kind of how long's a piece of string.
Yeah, but thank you.
Where are you based?
So funny enough, we're in South London, but we actually got an employee in Birmingham and an employee in Leeds. So we're now going to be having a little hub in Birmingham and Leeds. We're starting work on a school in North East Leeds soon, which is very exciting.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Harry. So I'm actually going to end on a sort of nice, easy question for you, Harry. Hopefully, anyway. I hope it's an easy one. And then we'll probably wrap up because we're coming close to our hour now. So final question is, how much space should there ideally be in front of a radiator to let the air flow properly?
Oh, I really like that question. I would say about 600 millimeters to a meter, something like that. If it has to be a bit less, it's not the end of the world. But I would give it, a couple of feet, I think would be about right.
Amazing, thank you. And then it means that at least the students sat right next to it doesn't get overheated as well.
Yeah, that's of course the other measure is do you feel comfortable at that distance?
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all your top tips, and for everyone, Mary and Harry, for you both sharing your own stories and your own experiences in climate action and energy saving. Just to remind everyone that we do have a webinar in a few weeks' time on, let me find the date quickly, sorry, on Tuesday, the 18th of October. And we'll be hearing from the Tree Council, hopefully WWF, and then another school, all about school grounds and biodiversity, and how to take action in that area. But please do get in touch with us. We will share all the information and useful links to RAFT and the UKSSN on our website underneath this recording. The recording will hopefully be uploaded in the next couple of days for you to share with your colleagues who couldn't make it today, or anyone else who would find it useful. So a really big thank you to Harry and Mary, and we'll end it there.